What if the silence you feel at night, when the noise of the day finally fades, is not just emptiness but a mirror of something deeper? Many of us know this scene well. Lying in bed, scrolling through our phones, hoping distraction will numb the faint unease that rises when nothing demands our attention. It is in those quiet pauses, after work, after a conversation ends, or in the stillness of a Sunday afternoon, that a subtle weight presses in. We feel it but rarely name it, the void we carry within. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Most of us spend our days running from it. We fill our schedules with tasks, surround ourselves with voices, and bury ourselves in entertainment. Yet behind the laughter at gatherings or even in the middle of success at work, there is a sudden awareness that something essential is missing. Have you felt it? That strange hollowness that creeps in just when life should feel most complete? This is not weakness. It is not failure. It is a universal human condition. The question is not whether you carry this emptiness, but why you avoid looking at it directly. What is it about silence and stillness that feels so threatening? Could it be that facing the void would mean confronting truths about who we are, truths we prefer to postpone? In this video, we will explore why we turn away from this inner vacuum, and more importantly, how confronting it might hold the very key to meaning. The Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl once suggested that our deepest suffering is not pain itself, but the absence of purpose. If he is right, then our resistance to the void is not a sign of weakness but an invitation to discover meaning where we least expect it. So before we begin, pause for a second and ask yourself, when was the last time you allowed the silence to speak? Not by filling it with music, not by numbing it with a show, but by sitting with it. Just you and the emptiness? That question might feel unsettling, but it is the doorway to a profound journey. And if you have ever felt this invisible emptiness shaping your choices, I invite you to stay with me until the end of this reflection. Leave a comment telling me one moment when you most clearly felt this inner silence. And do not forget to like and subscribe, because this space is here to help us face what most people spend their lives avoiding. Imagine for a moment if you stopped running from the emptiness. Instead of silencing it with busyness or distraction, you welcomed it as a visitor with something important to reveal. What would your life look like if the void you fear was not an enemy to avoid, but a teacher guiding you toward clarity? Think of a day where you no longer scramble to fill every pause with noise. The moments between tasks, instead of being unbearable, could become places of rest, even of insight. Rather than numbing yourself with endless scrolling or small talk, you might find that silence gives you access to a deeper strength, one not dependent on circumstances. What if, instead of avoiding the void, you discovered it was actually the birthplace of meaning? We often imagine fulfillment as adding more experiences, more achievements, more recognition. Yet what if fulfillment came not from addition but from subtraction? From peeling away the distractions and facing directly the uncomfortable silence inside? By daring to look into the void, you might uncover a surprising truth: that beneath the fear lies a source of resilience and orientation that no external success can give. Picture how your relationships might shift if you stopped expecting others to fill your inner emptiness. Instead of clinging to people out of fear of being alone, you could meet them with freedom, because you no longer need them to silence your inner doubts. Imagine the relief of entering a conversation not from hunger, but from wholeness. And what about your work? Many chase careers desperately, hoping each promotion will finally erase the feeling of something is missing. But if you faced the void, perhaps you would stop expecting your job to define your worth. You could work with purpose, not desperation, with a clarity that makes every task meaningful, even the small ones. The question, then, is simple but unsettling. Are you willing to stop running? Because the emptiness will not disappear by hiding from it, but when faced directly, it transforms. Instead of an abyss that swallows you, it becomes an opening through which meaning emerges. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this version of yourself, not escaping the silence but inhabiting it, at peace, grounded, free. That possibility is not abstract. It is available, but it demands courage. And that courage begins the moment you choose not to look away. We are taught to believe that avoiding pain is the path to happiness. From childhood, we are rewarded when we smile, when we achieve, when we appear fine. Society subtly whispers, keep moving, stay positive, do not dwell too much on the darker questions. The hidden message is that emptiness is a defect, a sign that something is wrong with you. But what if that belief is the very reason we feel so restless? Here is the disruptive insight. Emptiness is not a problem to be solved. It is part of what makes you human. To feel the void is to be alive. It signals that you are not a machine programmed only to consume and produce. It is evidence that you are a being who longs for meaning, not just survival. By treating emptiness as an illness, we have been taught to deny one of the most essential aspects of existence. Think about it. When you feel hunger, your body tells you it needs nourishment. When you feel thirst, you know water is required. In the same way, when you feel emptiness, it is not proof of failure. It is a signal from your soul that meaning is missing. Ignoring it does not make it go away. It only forces you into frantic substitutes, possessions, distractions, temporary highs. That is why so many find themselves exhausted after chasing pleasures. They misread the signal. The truth no one tells us is this: the void is not the enemy. The danger lies in refusing to face it. Because the moment you silence the signal, you also silence the possibility of transformation. By numbing the ache, you trade authentic meaning for counterfeit comfort. And ironically, the more you run, the larger the emptiness grows. What if, instead of fearing the void, you respected it as a compass? Every pang of emptiness could point you toward a deeper question. What am I living for? What truly matters? These questions are not comfortable, but they are the very doorway to a meaningful life. The rupture is clear. Emptiness is not a flaw to fix. It is a call to listen. And the sooner we stop treating it as an enemy, the sooner it becomes the ally that leads us to the depth we secretly crave. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, offers one of the clearest insights into this struggle. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, he described how those imprisoned in the concentration camps were confronted daily with unbearable suffering. Yet he noticed something striking. Survival was not simply about physical strength or even luck. It depended largely on whether a person could find meaning in the midst of pain. Frankl observed that when someone had a why to live for, they could endure almost any how. This is not just a poetic idea, it is a psychological truth. The void we feel inside is often nothing more than the absence of that why. We run from it because it exposes the fragility of our lives. How much of what we do is rooted in routine, in expectation, in shallow pleasures rather than authentic purpose. By grounding this reflection in Frankl's work, we see that emptiness is not a unique flaw of modern life. It is a condition of the human spirit that has haunted us for centuries. Yet Frankl's testimony reminds us, the void can be confronted. Even in the darkest, most dehumanizing circumstances, the search for meaning remains possible, and it is precisely that search that sustains us. But this is not just philosophy. Modern psychology echoes Frankl's insight. Research on existential therapy and logotherapy demonstrates that people who cultivate a sense of meaning experience greater resilience, lower anxiety, and deeper satisfaction, even if their external circumstances are difficult. In other words, confronting emptiness is not an abstract luxury. It is a matter of psychological survival. Think about how radical this is. Our culture trains us to cover emptiness with distractions. Frankl invites us to do the opposite, to face it, to dialogue with it, and to allow it to direct us toward what really matters. The void is not evidence that life has no meaning. It is the invitation to create or discover meaning. So the question is, will you keep numbing yourself with temporary fillers, or will you take Frankl's challenge seriously? Will you dare to look into the silence long enough to ask, what is my why? Because as Frankl reminds us, if we dare to find it, that why can carry us through anything. Most of us do not realize how subtly the void shapes our daily lives. It is like a shadow following us into every decision, every conversation, every restless night. We may not name it, but its presence drives much of what we do. And the tragedy is this: when left unexamined, the void dictates our lives in ways that keep us trapped. Think of how often we confuse distraction with fulfillment. We binge-watch shows not because the story is compelling, but because silence feels unbearable. We scroll endlessly on social media, not seeking connection, but avoiding stillness. We pursue promotions not out of passion, but because the applause briefly covers our inner hunger. These are not random habits. They are strategies of avoidance. Yet the more we avoid, the more enslaved we become to them. There is also a subtler dynamic at play, the way emptiness seeps into our relationships. Many of us place impossible weight on others, expecting them to fill the void we refuse to face ourselves. Partners, friends, even children. Without realizing it, we make them responsible for silencing our inner ache. But when they fail, as they inevitably do, resentment grows. This invisible expectation corrodes intimacy and leaves us lonelier than before. And then there is the problem of self-worth. When emptiness remains unnamed, we often misinterpret it as personal failure. If I feel hollow, I must be broken. But this is not true. The void is not proof of weakness. It is proof of humanity. Yet because we mistake it for defect, we desperately try to fix ourselves with surface-level solutions, self-improvement hacks, consumerist pleasures, shallow positivity. Instead of healing, we deepen the cycle of avoidance. These patterns are dangerous precisely because they are invisible. We rarely ask, why do I feel restless in silence? Why do I need others to validate me? Why do I fear being alone? Without naming the void, it rules us in secret. But here lies the turning point. Once you see the pattern, you can no longer be ruled by it. Awareness is the first act of freedom. When you name the void for what it is, a signal of missing meaning, you strip it of its hidden power. So pause and ask yourself, what in your life right now is truly an expression of your values, and what is just a strategy to cover the silence? That simple distinction might reveal more about you than years of surface-level striving. The truth is sharp, but it is also liberating. Let me put it into words you can carry with you. Silence is not your enemy. It is your teacher. The void you run from is not emptiness. It is an unanswered question. Distraction does not heal the ache. It only deepens it. You do not need more noise in your life. You need more meaning. The absence you feel inside is not proof that life is pointless. It is proof that you are capable of purpose. Running from the void will exhaust you. Facing it will transform you. These are not just phrases to remember. They are truths meant to cut through the fog of avoidance. Every time you feel that restlessness creep in, when you instinctively reach for your phone, when you drown yourself in busyness, when you fear being alone, stop for a moment and recall one of these sentences. Let it interrupt the cycle. Words have power when they become anchors. A single phrase repeated in the right moment can shift your perspective. Imagine if, instead of fearing the silence, you whispered to yourself, "This silence is my teacher." Suddenly, the moment changes. The void no longer threatens to swallow you. It becomes a space to encounter yourself more deeply. The world will not stop offering you distractions, but you can stop confusing distraction for relief. You can choose to recognize that every pang of emptiness is not a curse, but a compass pointing not outward, to consumption, but inward, to meaning. So carry these truths like stones in your pocket. Let them remind you that emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the call to live more fully. And when you feel tempted to run, pause and remember, the void is not the end of your story. It is where the real story begins. Here is a paradox that may surprise you. The very thing you fear most, the inner void, is also the very place where your deepest strength is born. It feels like a contradiction, but it is precisely within the emptiness that meaning has the chance to take root. We usually see life in dualities, full or empty, strong or weak, hopeful or hopeless. But the reality of the human experience is more mysterious. Emptiness and fullness are not enemies. They exist together. The void clears space, and that space is what allows meaning to emerge. Without the discomfort of emptiness, you would never ask the questions that matter most. Think of it like soil. On the surface, it looks like nothing but dirt, dark, empty, lifeless. Yet it is exactly this emptiness that creates the conditions for growth. A seed cannot sprout in marble. It needs soil, with all its dark silence, in order to grow. In the same way, the inner void feels barren, but it is precisely the ground where transformation becomes possible. Another paradox: when you try to escape the void, you become its prisoner. But when you choose to face it, you become free. Avoidance chains you to endless distractions. Confrontation breaks the chain because you finally stop running. By daring to sit in silence, you turn the very thing that haunted you into the very source of clarity. We often believe that strength means having no emptiness. Yet true strength is the courage to carry emptiness without denying it. Weakness is not feeling the void. Weakness is refusing to face it. The surprising truth, then, is that meaning and emptiness are not opposites. They are companions. Meaning does not erase the void. It gives you the courage to walk with it. And emptiness, in turn, keeps you from settling for shallow satisfactions. It pushes you to seek depth, to grow beyond comfort, to refuse mediocrity. So the paradox stands: the void you fear may be the very gift that keeps you alive to what matters most. It hurts, yes, but it also awakens. And perhaps the question is not how to eliminate the emptiness, but how to let it guide you to a life that is truly full. Now imagine the reward of no longer fearing the void. Picture yourself waking up and moving through your day without that constant need to cover the silence with noise. Imagine no longer depending on distractions, approval, or endless busyness just to feel safe. Instead, you walk with a quiet confidence because you know the emptiness is not your enemy, it is your guide. The reward of facing the void is freedom. Freedom from the exhausting chase for validation. Freedom from the illusion that the next purchase, the next achievement, the next relationship will finally make you whole. When you confront the silence, you stop outsourcing your worth. You become anchored in something deeper, something unshakable. And the reward does not stop with you. When you no longer expect others to fill your emptiness, your relationships change. Instead of clinging, you can give. Instead of demanding, you can listen. Instead of fearing loneliness, you can embrace solitude. You move from neediness to presence, and those around you feel the difference. There is also a reward in your work. Facing the void allows you to work not out of desperation, but out of meaning. Success stops being about proving yourself and becomes about serving something larger than yourself. Imagine the relief of doing what you do not because it fills a hole, but because it expresses your purpose. Perhaps the greatest reward is this: peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on circumstances, but the deep peace of knowing that emptiness has no power over you. You can sit in silence and feel whole. You can face the unanswered questions without panic. You can live with mystery because you know it is not a threat. It is an invitation. This is not a fantasy. It is the fruit of courage. The moment you stop running, the void begins to transform. And that transformation brings with it a reward greater than comfort. It brings strength, clarity, and a life that finally feels worth living. So ask yourself, what would change in your life if you no longer feared silence? That answer is the reward waiting for you. And it is closer than you think. To understand why the void feels so threatening, we need a framework. A way to see the invisible structure behind our experience. Here, philosophy and psychology converge. At the heart of it is what Viktor Frankl called the existential vacuum, a state where the absence of meaning creates an inner emptiness. Unlike hunger for food or thirst for water, this hunger is for purpose, for significance, for a reason to carry on. Existential psychology explains that human beings are not satisfied by pleasure alone, nor by power, nor by comfort. These may distract us temporarily, but they cannot answer the deeper question, why am I here? When that question remains unanswered, the vacuum opens. And when we avoid facing it, we end up trapped in cycles of addiction, consumerism, and shallow pursuits that never satisfy. Philosophy, too, has long wrestled with this condition. From the Stoics to Kierkegaard, thinkers have warned us that life without reflection leads to despair. Kierkegaard described despair not as loud suffering, but as a quiet sickness of the spirit, the condition of living without alignment to truth. And the Stoics reminded us that without virtue and purpose, No external success can shield us from emptiness. By integrating these insights, we can see the void for what it truly is, not an error in the system but part of the design. It is a signal, a reminder that you are more than instincts, more than consumption, more than survival. The void calls you upward, to transcend the small circle of self and to orient yourself toward something larger. Practically, this means that facing the void is less about filling it, and more about aligning with values. When you live only for comfort, the emptiness grows louder. When you live for truth, love, justice, or service, the emptiness becomes a doorway. It is not erased, but transformed. It sharpens your sense of direction. This conceptual structure explains why running from emptiness never works. Because the void is not asking for distraction, it is asking for depth. It is an invitation to discover a why that can sustain you. So the framework is clear. The void is real, it is universal, and it is not solved by avoidance. It is resolved only by meaning. And meaning, unlike distraction, requires choice, courage, and responsibility. And now, we arrive at the heart of it all. The emptiness you carry is not a curse. It is not a defect. It is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is the echo of your own capacity for meaning, calling you to live more deeply than comfort, more fully than distraction, more honestly than appearance. The void will not disappear, but it will change shape depending on how you face it. If you run, it grows into a shadow that consumes your days. If you stop and listen, it becomes a compass pointing you toward your true why. That is the paradox, and that is the gift. Viktor Frankl, who saw humanity at its darkest, still insisted that meaning is always within reach. Even when stripped of freedom, even when suffering seemed unbearable, he affirmed that the final freedom of every human being is the ability to choose their attitude, to decide what meaning they will live by. If it was true in the camps, it is true in the silence of your room tonight. So I leave you with a choice. You can keep numbing the emptiness, or you can dare to meet it with courage. You can let it terrify you, or you can let it teach you. The void is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of a more authentic journey. And now I want to hear from you. In the comments, share one moment in your life when the silence felt the loudest. Was it after an achievement, after a loss, or perhaps in an ordinary moment that caught you by surprise? By sharing, you remind yourself and others that none of us walk this road alone. If this reflection spoke to you, if it helped you see emptiness in a new light, then please like this video and subscribe, not just to support the channel, but to join a community committed to living with courage, meaning, and depth. Do not run from the void. Walk into it, because inside that silence lies the seed of a life truly worth living.